started. Alexandra, please take us away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandra. I'm going to briefly explain some of the technical features of today's call. This webinar is being recorded. There is an international sign interpretation, caption in English, and language interpretation in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. A CC button on the bottom of your screen in the meeting controls toolbar will enable the closed captions. If you need captions in the external window, the link is in the chat box. The interpretation button on the bottom of your screen, presented as a globe, will allow you to access specific language channel. Please choose your channel that you will follow throughout the meeting. The participants do not have an option to opening the microphones and video. We request all speakers to kindly keep to times and keep their camera off if not speaking. We are asking you that you speak slow enough for the interpreters and captioners to follow. Thank you very much and have a good week.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. And I should preference that I am an American at heart, so I do speak very fast. So please feel free to stop me at any point if I am speaking too quickly. But without further ado, super excited to welcome you all to this really important conversation about getting youth involved with the Global Disability Summit. Personally, as an active member of the Swedish Association for the Visually Impaired Youth, I know I'm really excited to work on this together and figure out the path forward on how we can collaborate on the Global Disability Summit. And I imagine most people are already aware or familiar with the Global Disability Summit. But if you're not, let me just briefly touch on it to make sure that we're all on the same page, and then I'll discuss the objectives of today's important webinar. But the Global Disability Summit, or GDS, as we might refer to it today, is this really unique opportunity to galvanize global efforts on disability inclusion worldwide. And it brings together a wide variety of stakeholders every few years to have these really important conversations on disability inclusion. So far, as many people know, there's been two global disability summits so far. The last one being in 2022 in the midst of the global pandemic. And then the next one, which is arguably why we're here today, is going to be in 2025 in early April in Berlin, Germany. So I know we have a few things to go over today, but the biggest components are four main objectives. The first being we want to just give an introduction on the Global Disability Summit and share ways on how we all as youth can engage in the conversation. We're also going to go through best practices or good practices on how to engage and how we can be involved. And we're also really going to focus on the things that have happened in the past, such as previous global disability summits, and the lessons learned from that process, and what we can do moving forward. And also, what I think is really important is to talk about these global commitments. So when we gather after the next Global Disability Summit, hopefully we see some really big progress. And fortunately for you all, I'm not going to be the one talking today. We have a list of fantastic speakers, I think a total of 8, which is very exciting for these next 2 hours together. And we'll have different question and answer opportunities throughout. And myself, along with the fellow speakers, will point out when it's a good time to take some of those question and answers. And we really encourage folks to use the Q&A box that's available here in the Zoom platform, and we will be sure to read out your questions out loud. But without further ado, it is really my distinct pleasure to introduce you to someone that most people, if you worked on Global Disability Summit so far, are already familiar with. And it is Greta, who is the Global Disability Summit Manager, who's really, truly leading us through this whole process. And I know, Greta, you're going to talk a little bit more about GDS and how we ultimately as youth can engage with this conversation. So, Greta, please take it away when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Erika, and thank you for the wonderful energy you're bringing today. Before I start, I know there's a few people that have been saying that they're unable to see the speaker and that only the interpreter is pinned. So I know how to pin myself and spotlight myself, but Alexandra, if I can ask for your help in making sure that everyone sees the speaker and has their camera and not just the one of the sign interpreter. Um, as Erika mentioned, I'll be briefly speaking about what the Global Disability Summit is, and then I'll outline some of the main opportunities for engagement, and then we'll have a first Q&A session. So if you have any questions, start typing them in the Q&A box or raise your hand, and we'll get to them. So, to get us started on the GDS, as Erika introduced, the Global Disability Summit is a mechanism with the objective of advancing the rights and the inclusion of persons with disabilities globally by mobilizing for commitments and by bringing together different stakeholders and talking about a lot of different thematic areas that are important when it comes to disability inclusion. The next Global Disability Summit is going to be held in Berlin on April 2nd and 3rd. And before the GDS, we're going to have a civil society forum, which is going to be held on April 1st. As the Global Disability Summit is not only a platform for civil society to come together, but rather a space for global leaders, UN agencies, and a lot of different actors to come together. We want the GDS to be preceded by a civil society day where civil society can come together and organize their asks to these global leaders. Now, as I know that most of you most likely know already a lot about the theoretical part of the Global Disability Summit, I'll focus my intervention today a bit more on different ways in which you can engage with the GDS and where are we with the shaping of its different aspects. So we currently already have a first draft of the program of the Global Disability Summit and of the Civil Society Forum, which are both available online on our website. And I'll put the link in the chat box as soon as I'm finished with my remarks. And we will be having a lot of different thematic sessions throughout the 2 days of the Global Disability Summit and the 1 day of the Civil Society Forum. As we shape these thematic sessions, we are looking to collect good practices on the different aspects that we will be talking about. So I would already encourage you to look through the program, and if you think your organization has interesting good practices to share that can help us talk about the topic in an innovative way, please do let us know, and we would be happy to take them into consideration. As you know, we will not have a youth summit this year, contrary to what happened in 2022. And we rather want to include the perspective of youth with disabilities across the program, which is why I think it's important that this webinar is the first of a series of webinars that look at the perspective of youth with disabilities, and also that you start letting us know about what your priorities are and what type of commitments you want to be seeing at the Global Disability Summit. Aside from the main program of the Global Disability Summit, we're also going to look at having different events throughout the 2 days. So we'll have side events, we'll have fireside chats, which are much smaller in size and will be conversations that accommodate up to 30 speakers, 30 people with a few speakers. And we will also have an exhibition space where different organizations and individuals will be able to showcase their work. So this is another important piece. And again, I'll share all of the links in the chat. So I'll stop saying this for now, and even more so for fireside chats if you are interested to do so. Now, to the more concrete and political aspect of the Global Disability Summit, we are always focusing on gathering commitments. Commitments are pledges that outline concrete actions, may that be financial, political, or programmatic in nature, that any given actor commits to do, pledges to do after the Global Disability Summit. We collected a lot of commitments for the Global Disability Summit in 2018 and 2022, and we're looking to do the same for 2025. However, we want the commitments for 2025 to be more concrete in nature, meaning to be reflective of actual needs and to be outlining concrete actions that are going to be taken. To mobilize for commitments, of course, we have been working as co-hosts to call on governments to submit commitments. We've been working with UN agencies to see where their interests lay when it comes to commitments. But it's also really important to have a push from civil society and from advocates when it comes to the submission of commitments. There are different groups that are working on call to actions that are specific to their line of work. And I think it would be a great outcome to have a call to action for commitments that comes from a youth perspective. And we would be happy to facilitate work that looks at what a call to action for youth could look like and what type of commitments you would like to see. And we'll have a session with Sylvain moderating about commitments later on today. In order to facilitate this type of advocacy work, we've been working on different communication tools that are also available online in our resources section. We have a very comprehensive advocacy toolkit that outlines key messages when you want to talk about the GDS. It contains a format letter that you can use to call for commitments by certain types of stakeholders. And it also has different social media templates in case you want to talk about the GDS online. Concluding my remarks, as I see there's a lot of questions, so maybe it would be better to just go through an interactive session. I know, of course, the main question is on funding of people to attend the Global Disability Summit. As International Disability Alliance, we had received a small grant to fund roughly 200 people and OPD representatives to attend the Global Disability Summit. We had a call for nominations that was open for a month, and we closed that call for application about 10 days ago on the 16th of November. If you did apply to be funded for the GDS and you've not heard back yet, do not worry. We are going through the applications. We received almost 3,000 nominations, which is great, but we are, of course, going through all of the nominations and evaluating them against parameters that were clearly set online when you applied for the funding opportunity. Of these 200 people, we've reserved a 25% quota for youth with disabilities, absolutely in line with what I was specifying regarding a need for more youth engagement during the GDS. And we're also looking and actively working on finding other funding opportunities that you may be able to access, and we will make sure to let you know in case that becomes an opportunity. We do publish all of these calls regularly on our newsletter and on our website. So I do hope that they reach you should they become available. Um, Erica, I think I'll stop here and maybe we can go through some Q&A.
Let's do it. And thank you for that summary, Greta. 3,000 applicants. That says a lot. So that's amazing. Good luck with the selection process. I see a few questions that popped up in the Q&A box, but I'll already take this opportunity to remind folks to please add your questions there and we'll get to them. Greta, do you want to take any of the first questions right off the bat that you think might be of interest?
Absolutely. I think there's a question about general expectations, and I think if I understand correctly, Joseph, you're asking about expectations for this webinar, and I think the objective of it is really to hear from youth with disabilities and look at what their priorities would be when it came to commitments. We'll have a participatory session after we've heard from a few speakers where we'll look at what type of commitments need to be made and under which areas, and also at identifying relevant stakeholders. And then in the last segment of the webinar, we'll also be looking at how to connect the GDS with other relevant existing mechanisms that promote youth engagement. Then there's a question from Kamran on how a person can participate without any organization. And thank you, Kamran, for raising this. Anyone can attend the Global Disability Summit. The registration link is online and it's available for anyone to register. Registration is free of cost. We, of course, understand the limitations of traveling to Berlin. As I mentioned, we are actively looking for more opportunities for funding of individuals and representatives of OPDs. Erika, I think I've answered all three questions. We can maybe see if there's anyone from the floor that has questions. And if you want to raise their hand, please do so. Otherwise, I would suggest that we go through the agenda. Maria Victoria, go ahead.
Hi, this is Maria. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Unfortunately, I cannot see myself, and maybe you can't see me. Could it be?
Yes, your camera is off, but it's okay. We can hear you fine.
Okay, because I don't see the camera symbol here actually. That's a problem. But I can shortly introduce myself. My name is Maria. I work in an OPD in Germany. And me and my colleague Dina, we are part of the Civil Society Reference Group, representing the German Disability Council. And we are actively planning a panel for the Civil Society Forum Greta was just talking about. And one of 4 panels will be about youth and children with disabilities. So my call for action for you to participate is that I will write down my email address here in the chat box. And if you want, you can write me. If you are interested in participating maybe on the panel or somewhere else in the Civil Society Forum, because we we are right now looking for panelists. So if you're interested, just write me, and yeah, maybe we can have like a one-on-one Zoom talk if you want, or write emails and talk about what we can do together for the civil society forum. For me, it's personally very important that children and youth are very active at the civil society forum. It's also very important that we get the connection between the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Children Rights Convention. So yeah, and I also would love to have children and youth talking not only about health questions and inclusive educations. These are very important topics, but I think there's much more children and youth with disabilities can talk about and yeah, need to talk about and to be listened to. So thank you very much. I will put my infos here in the chat box, and yeah, feel free to write me. I'm sorry you couldn't see me. I'm sorry. Bye bye.
That's okay. No apologies necessary. And thank you so much for sharing that. Great resources already on how we can collaborate. And thank you for sharing your email with folks. And I saw another question related to the Global Disability Summit website. I see that's already also posted in the chat box. So feel free to access that website. I know personally, I access that website almost every day and highly recommend it. So be sure to take a look at that. And also the LinkedIn page for the Global Disability Summit. If you use LinkedIn, I find that one to be really helpful too. Greta, any other final questions before we move on with the rest of the program that you wanted to address?
Thank you so much, Erica. No other questions. There was a question regarding where to submit good practices, and I shared our summit email. I will also do so now in the chat. Indeed, there's also a question about the chat box being disabled. That is correct. Please write your questions in the Q&A box so that we keep the chat for information sharing of important links and documents.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much, Greta. Well, speaking of good practices, that is the next aspect of our agenda where I know I already want to hear what folks are doing across the world because we are covering a lot of different continents on this call alone. I know I'm in Brussels, Belgium, and I know our next speaker, I believe, is in Nepal. So I'm excited to transition the conversation to really focusing on these good practices and how we can really build these strong partnerships moving forward with the Global Disability Summit. So without further ado, I'm excited to pass the floor to Jivan with the Blind Youth Association Nepal, who's a program officer focusing on civic engagement and political participation. So please, Jivan, please take the floor and share your good practices with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think I'm audible. So thank you, Erica, and thank you, the organizers. This is Jeevan, as already introduced. So I'm a lawyer specializing in international law and international human rights law,
أنا
and currently
محام
working in the civic engagement and
وأعمل
political participation
في
in
مجال
South Asian Nepal. I'd like to go next.
المشاركة
Second slide.
المدنية. سوف أقوم
Actually, Blind Youth Association Nepal
بعرض
is the
الأطروحة الخاصة بي.
organization that
أنا
was
أنتمي
established and
إلى
operated
منظمة
by the
قد
visually impaired and
بدأت
partially sighted, blind and partially sighted youth
وذلك
to the age 16 to
للمكفوفين
40 years, and
ولضعاف النظر
it's working
وذلك
more than 12
في
years.
عام
It's not
2011
only working for
وإنها
blind and visually impaired youth, but
لا
for
تعمل
all youth with disabilities, working in sectional and even including the youth with LGBT youths from LGBTIQ communities. So we have 10 chapters and more than more than 815 members are currently the members of the organization. The third slide, actually, the persons with disabilities comprise 2.25%, and there's the statistics. I think that's not that much relevant, but more than actually the 56% of this population, the 2.25% of the total population, that is the disability, and 56% are the young people with disabilities among the disability population. And we have ratified, and this fourth slide, we have ratified the UNCIPD, and the Constitution of Nepal ensures the right to political participation and civic engagement. In actually, it actually reserves the actually seats for the Parliament in House of Representatives and National Assembly for persons with disabilities um, from the proportionate representation system, but the implementation is lacking. And the Section 11 of this of the Act relating to rights of persons with disabilities has absolutely provided the political participation, and Section 12 has provided actually guaranteed the participation into policy making process for the persons with disabilities. So as I'm talking about the good practices of uh, good practices in the civic engagement and political participation for young people with disabilities, we undertook a project supported by Youth Democracy Cohort and European Union, and we worked under in various approaches. Firstly, we conducted the series of provincial and federal dialogues that included the mainstreaming disability youth movement in the overall youth movement. So we conducted dialogues with various civil society organizations, especially the youth organizations, and we advocated for inclusion and mainstreaming the youth with disabilities in their movements, activities, and their initiatives. And also we conducted the actually we conducted the dialogue with young parliamentarians, political leaders from provincial and federal level, and we advocated for full and effective implementation of the existing provisions that have been guaranteed by Act relating to rights of persons with disabilities and Constitution of Nepal. Actually, we have the provisions uh, reserving the quotas, but not many people are represented in the parliament and other decision-making levels. So, and we also advocated for the inclusive political parties. So we conducted rounds of meetings with the political party leaders to actually ask for the equal space for the persons with disabilities, especially young people, in their party structures and organizations. And also we conducted mentorship programs for the 10 youths. Actually, we placed them in the various local levels and election commission offices, and those beneficiaries, those mentees, were from various cross disability section, and we actually placed them in the local level, and they performed certain jobs. For example, there are some specific disability sections in the local levels. They worked there, and they involved in basically in the local level planning process and budgeting process. So 10 municipalities were selected, and uh, they advocated, they actually participated in the planning and budgeting process, and some of the good budgeting and good actually policy frameworks that have been achieved from the local levels in for the young people with disabilities. And also we conducted trainings and workshops on uh, actually human rights, democracy, and civic engagement for young people with disabilities. And that is the actually very first initiatives that we were undertaking. That we worked mainly with 8 kinds of young people with disabilities, and we trained them on various political and civil political rights, including the constitutional and fundamental rights, the human rights principles and practices, basic things, and the other things such as the democratic the democratic leadership, the current actually the misinformation, right to information as the tool of evidence-based advocacy, that have been actually that were sorry that those actually topics were covered in the civil and political right trainings, and the actually they were the combating misdisinformation strategic litigation also, even strategic litigation of the causes that were also the workshop, that those topics also covered. So those trainings were very first, and we also trained. We also aware the young people with disabilities on the inclusive electoral process, including the pre-election, during election, and post-election phases. We sensitize them how we can advocate for accessible and inclusive, disability inclusive electoral processes in those 3 electoral phases. We sensitize them, and we also actually prepared a research paper on the status of participation of young people with disabilities into the civic space and political process. So the evidence status paper that was prepared, the evidence status paper that highlights is persons with disabilities are very less in terms of the full and effective and meaningful participation into the policy-making process, civic engagement affairs, civic spaces, and actually more than 86% people responded that they were not actually offered, or they are not consulted during the policy-making process, and political parties also neglect them when there comes the chance of leadership and decision-making process. So that was the result. And we also publish the capacity development manual for young people with disabilities for civic engagement and political participation process. This capacity development manual actually it lists many provisions, including national and international provisions on civic engagement and political participation issues. And this manual also delivers some key concept of civic engagement and political participation, including right to participate into the public life for young people with disabilities. And we found interesting that the UNCIPD has not that much talked directly about the youth or young people. And that was also the interesting finding. So this capacity development manual, this is designed to the trainers on how we can train the young people with disabilities for their effective civic engagement process, and how the local levels, how political parties, how the parliaments, how the lawmakers can include the disability components in their planning, policy making, and lawmaking process. The development manual, the capacity development manual stipulates those areas. And we also worked in the draft amendment of national youth policy. So currently where Nepal is, currently Nepal actually is revising the national youth policy, and we participated into the consultation process, and many of the amendments, we actually submitted 45 amendments in the draft policy, and majority of the amendments that have been incorporated now in the draft policy, and it is yet to be actually approved or adopted from the parliament. And we also provided our inputs on the human right declaration, youth human right declaration, 75th declaration on youth, that actually was the draft. There was the 12 advisory draft, actually drafting committee, the advisory committee of drafting the human rights declaration, and we provided the inputs from the youth perspective, and the participation in and assistance of human rights defenders with disabilities, especially the young people, and also the reassurance and full implementation of the human rights for young people with disabilities. Many of the provisions that have been actually incorporated, even though the declaration does not specifically address the term youth with disabilities, but the declaration has been made intersectional and inclusive for also the persons with disabilities. That was delivered before OHCHR, I think on 11th of December, I believe, the previous year. So Yeah, this is my presentation. Overall, we are working to capacitate the persons with disabilities on the civic engagement political participation area. And we are also holding the stakeholder dialogues with the parliamentarians, National Youth Council, that is the national body of youth actually organizations. And we are also conducting dialogues with the Election Commission Nepal, National Polling Planning Commission, to make our elections, our actually civic engagement spacious, inclusive, and accessible for all. And finally, we are also holding the local level advocacy meetings. Actually, we conducted more than 100 advocacy meetings within a year, and as a result of that, we are able to uh, actually bring some accessible, disability friendly, disability inclusive local level policies and budgets. And also two local levels, and they started designing their local level infrastructures accessible for persons with disabilities. They were actually unaware about those accessibility things and reasonable accommodation things. Uh, but as we were frequently engaging with them, so they are now sensitized. I think this covers my short presentation, but I would definitely love to share the research and the works in very great detail, and I'll be also more than happy to work in this GDS process and other CSO forums to share our good practices and our key work issues from
Yes.
Nepal.
This is Erica again, Juan. Thank you so much. And I know I've had the distinct pleasure of seeing this work firsthand when I visited you in Nepal. So I echo everything you said and hope you connect with Maria, just as they were looking for involvement in the civil society forum. And I think you touched on some really important aspects of highlighting why it's so important that we as youth are involved in this process and what we expect from stakeholders and our governments when it comes to civic participation and political participation. I think you touched on that you want to see the Nepal government really focus on national commitments that ensure that persons with disabilities, including youth with disabilities, are included in the civic engagement space. And that could be hopefully, maybe a commitment from Nepal at the Global Disability Summit. Just saying words here as we are transitioning really into this next topic of conversation related to this commitment aspect that we heard Greta talk about a little earlier, and what this really means tangibly with the Global Disability Summit. So we can see the work that y'all are doing in Nepal and then really see that work moving forward with these type of commitments. And that's going to be the next topic of our conversation today before we go into a brief Q&A session. So folks can definitely ask you questions here. We'll just go with one more speaker and then take it away. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce Fatum Ade. And my sincere apologies, Fatum, if I mispronounced your name, please feel free to correct me. But you are the chairperson of the Indonesian Mental Health Association, and you're going to talk again about these commitments and what are they and why are they so important with youth with disabilities. So please take it away.
Ya, apakah saya bisa meminta
Right.
akses?
Can I ask you to give me access to share my
Oke, baik,
presentation?
terima
Okay, good.
kasih
Right. Thank you very
Erika
much,
atas
Erika,
waktu yang diberikan kepada
for
saya.
the
Saya
time that
akan
you have
izin
given
untuk share
me.
screen.
Please allow me to share my screen now.
Mohon maaf saya menggunakan bahasa Indonesia karena
Please allow me to use
bahasa
Indonesian
Inggris saya belum lancar ya. Jadi
because
saya
my
berharap
English is not
agar
that good.
nanti
But I do
seperti
hope
saya
that
ini kemudian bisa dipahami
my
oleh semua
presentation
orang.
could be well understood by everyone. Well,
Baik,
right. So,
saya Fatum Ade seperti tadi sudah
my
diperkenalkan
name is
oleh
Fatum Ade, as already
Erika.
been mentioned before
Saya
by
anggota
Erika.
harian dari
I
Indonesian
am
Mental Health
the
Association.
chair of the Indonesian Mental Health Association,
Kemudian saya nanti juga
the
akan
daily
menjadi
chair.
panel pada
My
nomor 4.
chair,
Kali ini
Miss
saya akan
Yeni
menyampaikan
Rosa.
berkaitan dengan
But today, I
peran
would like to share with you about the
pemuda
role
dengan
of
disabilitas
the youth
sosial
with
dalam
psychosocial
menetapkan
disabilities
komitmen pemerintah
in
untuk
strengthening our government's
deinstitusionalisasi.
commitment to the institutionalization.
Ya, lanjut.
Right. Next.
Ya, untuk komitmen, kita
So,
tahu
what is the
bahwa
commitment? We all know that
globalisasi
as
untuk
a space
menguatkan
to strengthen
dan kemudian memberikan
and
dorongan
also
kepada kita untuk
to
mendapatkan
encourage all of
komitmen
us
yang baik
to get
dari
more
pemerintah, di mana
commitments from
pemerintah pun
governments
dapat
of each
kemudian
country in which
membantu
that
kita
these commitments
untuk
could help
mewujudkan
us
atau
to
mengkonkretkan
realize
sistem
and also
dan
to make it
struktural
real in a
implementasi dari
systematic
hak-hak penyandang
in a
disabilitas
systemic and
sesuai
structural
dengan
manner
mandat
in order to
Konvensi
realize the
PBB
rights of
tentang
people
hak-hak
of
penyandang
disability
disabilitas.
according to the mandates of the
Komitmen ini
UNCRPD.
juga akan
This
membantu kita
commitment
sebagai
will then
muda
help us
untuk
as the youth
menambah
to
atau menguatkan lagi
that
jaringan
or
kita
maybe to
dengan
strengthen even further
pemerintah,
our
organisasi
networking with
disabilitas
the
lainnya,
government,
kemudian
with other
akademisi ataupun
OPDs, with the
sektor
universities academician,
private lainnya
and
untuk
other
kemudian
private
mengambil
sectors, including private
sikap dan
sectors, and then
inisiatif
to
atau termasuk
take
dengan
actions, to
kebijakan
take a
yang
stand
spesifik
and
tentunya
action, including
agar
also to
bisa
create
menanamkan
policies that
inklusi
are more
disabilitas
specific so
bagi
that
kita
we can
semua.
implement disability inclusion better for all of us. Then next.
Ya,
Right.
sebagai orang yang sudah kemudian
As someone who
mendapatkan
has
manfaat
gained
dari komitmen yang diberikan
benefits
oleh
from these
pemerintah
commitments
dari
given by the government
apa yang sudah
through
diupayakan oleh
what has
GDS
been
ini,
made
saya kira
through GDS, I
ada tiga
think
hal ya yang saya garis
there are three
bawahi,
things at
yang
least that I
mana
can underline
manfaat
here,
dari komitmen-komitmen
in which that the
pemerintah
benefits of
bisa
these
menguatkan
commitments
advokasi
have really
organisasi penyandang
strengthened
disabilitas
the advocacy
di
made by
negara-negara
the
masing-masing untuk
organizations of people with
mengimplementasikan
disability
hak-hak
in their
penyandang
own countries
disabilitas
when it comes to
dan
the implementation
mendorong
of the rights
pemerintah
of people with
untuk
disability
memikirkan
and really
dan
encourage the
merealisasikan
government to
upaya-upaya
start
penghormatan,
thinking and
perlindungan, dan
realizing
pemenuhan hak-hak
the
penyandang
efforts
disabilitas
to
di
fulfill the
negara
rights to
kita,
protect the rights
dan
of people of
kemudian
disability
mendorong
within
partisipasi
our
bermakna
countries and
bagi penyandang
other to
disabilitas dalam
encourage further
pemenuhan hak-hak
meaningful
penyandang disabilitas.
participation in order to
Ini
fulfill the
sudah
rights
kami
of people with
rasakan.
disability.
Sebagai
We,
informasi,
we have
di
felt,
tahun
we have
GDS
gained these
sebelumnya,
benefits.
saya memang
So
tidak
in the
terlibat
previous
langsung untuk
JS,
kemudian datang
yes,
ke
I was not
event
directly
GDS di hari
involved,
hanya,
that I did not
tapi
go directly
proses-proses
on to
untuk
that event.
kemudian menguatkan
But
komitmen
the
di
whole
Indonesia,
process to
saya dan
strengthen the commitment
organisasi
in Indonesia,
saya, Indonesia
I
Mental Health
and my
Association,
organization and I,
terlibat
Indonesian
penuh
Health Mental
untuk menguatkan,
Association,
memberikan
were
komitmen
fully
dari apa yang sudah kemudian
involved in order to strengthen the commitment that has
kami
already been given
komitmenkan di
by the
tahun
government
GDS 2022
in
tersebut.
the
Lanjut.
GDS 2022. Next.
Ya, bagaimana orang
Right.
muda melihat
How
mekanisme
do
komitmen
youth
yang GDS buat ini?
view the GDS
Bagi
commitment
saya
mechanism?
dan
So for me
IHA,
personally and
yang
our
kemudian
organization,
berfokus pada isu penyandang
and which
disabilitas
that we
psikososial,
focus on
kami kemudian
psychosocial
melihat bahwa
disability,
komitmen ini
we
sangat-sangat
saw
penting
that these
dalam
commitments
mendorong
are
kerja-kerja
highly
kami
crucial in
untuk
order to
pemenuhan hak-hak
encourage
penyandang
our
disabilitas
work to
psikososial
fulfill the rights
di
of
Indonesia.
people with psychosocial social
Ini ada
disabilities here
data
in Indonesia.
yang terbaru
Here
ya,
we have
belum lama,
data, the
tahun
latest data.
2022
This is
oleh
quite recent
Riset
data from
Indonesia
2022
National
by
Adolescent
Indonesian
Mental Health Survey
National
yang
Adolescents Mental
kemudian
Health Survey
menyampaikan bahwa satu
to
dari
share
20
that
anak
one
muda atau orang
out
muda
of 20 young
atau
people
5,5% atau setara
or
dengan
5.5%
2,5
or
juta
equal to
gitu ya, orang
2.45
muda
million
gitu
youth
terdiagnosis mengalami
are
masalah gangguan
diagnosed
mental gitu ya.
with mental
Dan
health
satu dari
issues.
tiga
And
orang tersebut
one
atau
in
sekitar
three of these
34,9%
young people, so
setara dengan
34.9%,
15,5
or
juta
equivalent to 15.5
remaja atau
million,
youth gitu ya, memiliki satu masalah kesehatan
uh,
mental gitu.
has
Nah,
also at least
pasalnya
one mental health problem. The issue
situasi
is
ini artinya cukup banyak
this
ya orang
situation,
mengalami gangguan
it means that
jiwa, dan
there are many people
jika
suffer
karena
from this
riset ini
health
mengatakan
issues,
bahwa
mental health issues, because the research
sekitar
says
satu
that.
tahun gitu ya, lebih dari satu tahun
So
mental
this
health
research
yang
was
mereka
conducted for
alami
more than
gitu.
1 year.
Jadi kalau kita merujuk
So it
pada
means that
undang-undang kami,
if
undang-undang
we refer
disabilitas,
to our
bahwa lebih
law,
dari
the
6
law on
bulan
disability that we have in
orang
our
tersebut
countries,
adalah
if
dapat
someone
mengalami gangguan
suffer
gitu
for
ya,
more
yang
than
menghambat
6 months
sosial dia
of
berinteraksi,
mental
maka
health
bisa kami
issues
kategorikan
that become a
disabilitas
problem.
gitu ya.
Uh,
Dalam
so
konteks
we
ini
can call
bahwa
this
terdapat
someone with
banyak sekali
psychosocial disability when it is
disabilitas
more than 6 months.
psikososial
So
yang
that's
ada
why
di
right now
Indonesia
we
gitu.
have to
Namun
realize that there are
ketika kita
many
melihat
people with the
bahwa
psychosocial
ternyata
issues in Indonesia.
situasi yang
But
banyak ini
when we look
soal
at the actual
bagaimana
number,
perlakuan dan pendekatan
there is
yang
the next
digunakan
issue,
oleh
which is about
negara
the
dalam
treatment
hal
and
pemenuhan
approach
bagi
used
hak
by
bagi
the
orang-orang dengan
state
disabilitas
in
psikososial,
order to
yang
fulfill
mana
the
masih
rights of people with
menggunakan
psychosocial disabilities,
segregasi dan
in which that
eksklusi
the approach
di
is still
tempat-tempat
use
penampungan atau
segregation
mental care
and
institution,
exclusive approach
yang
in
mana masih
mental care
menggunakan peran padan,
institutions that
pemasungan,
still
penghubungan,
use
dan kami
that
juga
they are
temukan
still
berbagai
cage, for example,
bentuk-bentuk
that they are
kekerasan
still
dan
being
pelanggaran HAM terjadi di
chained.
panti-panti
So this is where we found a
rehabilitasi
lot of
atau social care
violations of
mental
human rights
institution
and
di
the
Indonesia.
use of a lot of violence in this mental care
MHA dan
institutions
saya
in
juga
Indonesia.
ketika
So
berkunjung
MHA,
ke
this
panti-panti
organization, and I,
rehabilitasi atau
when we visited these
social care mental
institutions,
institution, kami
these social
kemudian
care mental
menemukan
institutions,
orang
we
dengan
then
disabilitas
found
psikososial
that
yang
people with
dikurung
these psychosocial
di tempat
disabilities
ini, kebanyakan
caged in
sebagian di
these
antaranya adalah
places,
orang
most
muda.
of them
Bisa dibayangkan
were young people. So
orang muda yang
imagine
tinggal di sana, yang
these
dikurung
young people
bertahun-tahun,
live
bahkan kami
there,
menemukan
put
sejak
inside, like being
tempat itu
caged there
berdiri dari tahun
for years, that
2001
some even
hingga saat
already
ini
there
dia
since it
masih
was
berada
established
di
from
dalam panti,
2001.
terisolasi,
He was still
dibantai,
there up
dan
until
kemudian
now,
sangat mengenaskan
isolated,
kondisinya.
caged, and also chained,
Artinya,
found themselves in such a
ada
very bad
2 tahun
conditions.
dia terkurung di
So
dalam panti
it means that
tersebut, di
they've
tempat
been
tersebut,
that place
masa
for tens
produktifnya
of
hilang,
years.
dan
So he
kemudian
lost his
apa
productivity
namanya
years, right?
hak dia untuk
And
menggapai masa
he or
depan
she
pun ikut
lost
hilang.
their rights to create a
Kita
better
juga
future for
mengetahui di
themselves.
Indonesia bahwa
And we
stigma dan
also know here
diskriminasi
in
pada orang
Indonesia
dengan
that there
disabilitas
is this
psikososial sangat
strong
kuat.
stigma and
Ini
a
juga menjadi
discrimination
alasan
to the
kenapa
people with psychosocial
kaum muda
disabilities. And
dengan
this is also the
yang
reason why
kemudian
young
mengalami
people
masalah
with
atau
psychosis,
gangguan
with
mental
the
atau kemudian
mental health
mengalami disabilitas
issues
psikososial,
or with the
dia tidak mau
psychosocial disability,
memeriksa
they
kondisinya atau
do not want
apa
to
namanya
have themselves
sharing kepada
diagnosed
orang lain
or
karena takut
do not
distigma
want to share
sebagai
about
orang gila.
their conditions because they are afraid that there will be
Ini
stigma of
adalah
people call them
yang selanjutnya.
crazy.
Ini adalah
And next slide,
gambar di mana
this is the picture
institusionalisasi pada
in
orang
which that
dengan
this institutionalization
disabilitas psikososial.
of people with psychosocial
Ibu bapak dan
disability,
teman-teman semua bisa melihat 4
as
gambar
you
ini
all of you could
adalah
see from these 4 pictures,
orang-orang
all of
muda
these 4 people,
yang
they
kemudian
are all
terkurung di
young
dalam
people
panti-panti
that
rehabilitasi
have
mental di
been
Indonesia.
caged in
Mereka
this
kemudian
mental rehabilitation
hampir
institution in Indonesia.
lebih dari
And
ada yang 10
more
tahun,
than,
ada yang
so
2
some of them
tahun,
have been there
ada
for
yang
10 years, yes,
belasan
some
tahun, yang
2 years,
dengan
but
pojok
some
bawah
even
itu
tens of
teman
years.
kami yang saat ini sudah
So the
meninggal,
one on the
dia
right,
terkurung hampir 20 tahun
right
di panti
below,
rehabilitasi.
when
Bisa
he already
dibayangkan
passed away,
naasnya
caged for
dan situasi yang
20,
dia
more than
alami
20 years. So
membuat dia
imagine
kehilangan masa
how the
depan,
kind of
membuat
suffering
dia
that he had.
kehilangan
He
hak
lost his future.
usia
He
produktifnya
lost
untuk
his
bekerja, untuk
productive
belajar,
years to work,
untuk
to
mengasah
study,
kemampuannya,
and
hanya
also
karena
to
dia
improve his skills
kemudian
just
disabilitas
because
psikososial dan dimasukkan ke
he
dalam
had
panti.
psychosocial disabilities and put
Maka
in
dari
this
situ kami
institution.
melihat bahwa
And therefore,
slide
we
selanjutnya,
saw that, yeah,
kami
back in the
melihat
slide.
bahwa
And
institusionalisasi
therefore,
ini
we saw
melanggar
that the
CRPD agar
institutionalization
hak-hak
actually
penyandang
violates
disabilitas
CRPD,
psikososial.
violates the rights of
Kalau
persons
kita
with
lihat
psychosocial
ada
disabilities.
4
And
gitu
if
ya,
we
4
saw,
pasal yang
I told you,
kemudian
there
dilanggar
were
oleh
4 articles that have been
institusionalisasi,
violated
yaitu
through
pasal
this
14 tentang
institutionalization,
hak
which is
kebebasan dan
Article
keamanan
14
pribadi,
on the
pasal
rights to
15
liberty
tentang
and
hak
security of
kebebasan dari
persons, Article
penyiksaan,
15, the rights
perlakuan
to
dan
be free
hukuman yang
from
kejam,
torture,
tunjangan
inhuman or
suami dan
degrading
merentah
treatment or
martabat.
punishment.
Kami dengan
And
tegas
then
menemukan
we
kasus-kasus
clearly
penyiksaan di
found
panti-panti
cases
rehabilitasi atau
of tortures in
social
these
care mental institution,
institutions, in the
di
social
mana
care mental
terdapat banyak
institutions,
penyiksaan,
in which
bentuk-bentuk
that we saw a
penyiksaan.
lot of
Kemudian
tortures,
juga di pasal
various forms of
16
tortures.
tentang hak
And then
bebas
Article
dari
16 also
eksploitasi,
talk about the
kekerasan dan
right to be free
penyalahgunaan,
from exploitation,
dan
violence,
pasal
and
19
abuse.
tentang
And
hidup
in Article
mandiri dan
19
inklusif
on the
bermasyarakat.
right to live independently and
Orang dengan
inclusively
disabilitas
in the community.
psikososial di
People with
Indonesia,
psychosocial
ketika
disability
mereka
here
masuk
in
ke dalam
Indonesia,
panti
when they found
rehabilitasi
themselves in
tersebut,
institution,
mereka tidak
the
bisa keluar
rehabilitation institution,
sesuka hati mereka, atau
they
mereka
could
bilang,
not
oh saya ingin
go
keluar dari
out
panti
as
tersebut,
free as they could,
saya
or
mau
they
pulang,
just
saya
simply say,
ingin bekerja
I
dan
want to get
sebagainya.
out, I want to go
Mereka
home, I
tidak
want to
bisa
work. They
keluar
cannot do it.
sampai
They
kapanpun.
don't have the rights.
Hanya Yang boleh
to
bisa
be free
mengeluarkan mereka adalah
until
pihak panti.
the only person that can allow them to go out is the institution themselves.
Fatim,
Fatima,
thank
I'm so
you.
sorry. Sorry, Erica, go ahead.
No,
I
I just thank you so much for sharing this. I do apologize, but we are running out of time and want to make sure that we can get to the Q&A session. So if it's all right, we would like to transition to ensure that people can ask you those questions that they need to related to commitments, and to really have that conversation based on what you're sharing today of the important work that you're doing in Indonesia. So thank you so much for sharing the work that you're doing, but we'll then transition into questions if that's all right. Perfect. And Greta, I know you jumped in there and been following the chat. So if you could do me, or the Q&A box, excuse me. So could you help us facilitate the Q&A piece of this section before we have a quick break to ensure that our interpreters get a break before we continue on with today's discussion?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Erika. Happy to help with this. And again, Fatum, our apologies, as we have a packed agenda. We do need to be strict with time. We have a question on commitments implementation. And the question is, how do you implement commitments? Do you provide funding for the OPDs to implement their commitments, which have been made at the GDS? I'm happy to take this question, and then in the meantime, if there's participants that have questions for Fatum or G1, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll get to you. So implementation of commitments is the responsibility of those that submit the commitment, which means that the Global Disability Summit mechanism and the co-hosts do not provide funding to implement the commitment. What we have done to facilitate commitments that are jointly shaped between organization of persons with disabilities and other stakeholders is a joint commitment feature on our commitments platform. I will put the link on the chat right after. So you can go to the commitment platform, outline your desired commitment, and say that you are looking for a partner. And that partner can be a funding partner to implement the commitment. So I hope this replies the funding aspect of the question. Of course, the commitment mechanism is a voluntary mechanism, which means that we have reporting every year, and we call for all those that have submitted commitments to report. And we ask everyone to help us in advocating so that these commitments are implemented and reported on. So that's another important piece of advocacy that comes after the GDS. Erica, over to you.
Thank you. And I think I don't see any hands raised at the moment, but I will ask for visual support if I'm wrong with that. And Greta, if you see any hands, but I don't see any other questions in the chat. No hands raised.
No hand raised. The only hand raised is my own because I made a mistake.
Oh, well, lovely. Now we know it works. So I think that gives us a nice time just to give our fantastic interpreters and translators a quick break, just about actually 5 minutes. And I personally have a request. If during this break, for those who feel comfortable, if you could please turn your camera on and we could get a lovely picture of us all to really highlight that we, a part of the youth community, want to be a part of the Global Disability Summit, and we are here to provide that important information and input. So to those who feel comfortable, please put your camera on, no obligation, and we will take a photo and then take a very quick break and rejoin at 2 minutes after, or I know we all have different time zones. So on my clock, it would be 14:02, but I don't know if that helps for everyone else.
Thanks so much, Erica. Actually, and I'm sorry about this. Unluckily, due to the volume of participants, we are not able to have cameras on for everyone. We would have to like manually put the video on for everyone. So we'll avoid this for today. But yes, we'll see you back at 2 minutes past the hour, depending on which hour you're based on.
Hi, everyone. It is 2 minutes after the top of the hour for me here in Brussels. I believe I see our international sign interpreter already with us, so thank you. And I will be better on time now and extend my apologies. So we have a packed next hour together, so we're gonna get right into it. And now we have actually a participatory session, so a little bit more engagement can happen at the moment. And I'm very excited to give the floor to Sylvain. Again, so sorry if I mispronounce your name. You are the founder and executive director of Enable the Disable Action. So please take it away for this participatory session to really talk about these commitment processes and aligning GDS commitments with youth priorities and the Pact for the Future, I believe. So please take it away.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole accordée. Merci d'avoir cette opportunité, étant aussi jeune, de diriger ce segment.
Sylvia, I'm so
Qui
sorry. I'm going to
s'aligne
interrupt.
sur l'engagement des jeunes et la priorité dans le cadre des pactes pour l'avenir.
Oh, sorry, I'm jumping in here. I just want to make sure our interpretation is working correctly, as I don't seem to be.
Allô?
Hello.
Oh, perfect. Now it seems to work. Okay, all set. Please take it away.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Alors, merci beaucoup, comme je disais.
Thank you very
Je
much.
vais,
As I said,
dans un
I
premier temps, commencer d'abord
will
par donner
firstly
sur
start
l'avenir,
by
mais également parler dans les
talking
priorités
about
des
the
jeunes
future
que nous sommes.
and
Et nous tous, nous le
we are
savons pour
we
ceux qui
know
suivent
all
qu'il y a maintenant
that
2 mois, je crois, que c'est en septembre,
we
que
have
les pays ont
since
adopté à
September
l'unanimité
adopted
à l'occasion du
unanimously
sommet pour l'avenir,
for
ce sommet qui vise à
the
repenser
summit
le
for the
système
future,
multilatéral
which
pour
is
répondre aux
trying
défis
to
globaux.
use multilateral system in
Et
order to respond to global
de cette rencontre a
problems.
été l'adoption à l'unanimité, comme je disais, des
We
pactes pour l'avenir,
have
et qui
adopted
a également été
unanimously the
accompagné
Pact for the
des annexes,
Future
dont notamment le
and
pacte
the
numérique mondial et la
annexes,
déclaration sur les générations futures. Et les engagements du
the
pacte pour l'avenir
engagements
qui ont été adoptés
within the Pact for the
sont
Future
aux objectifs de développement durable et à la
of
COP
the
de
sustainable
2015 qui
future
ont permis progrès hésitants et
that
aussi des
have
échéances,
allowed
des actions qui sont
progress
liées
and actions
aux
that
jeunes.
are
Il y a
linked to
notamment
the
parmi les grandes
young
actions, on a
people.
parlé de pouvoir
We
écouter les jeunes et
have
les inclure dans la
spoken
prise
about
de
listening to young
décision
people and
au
including
niveau
them in
national et
the
mondial,
decision making
mais
on the
aussi on
national and
a
global level.
demandé à ce
But
qu'il y
we
ait
have also
des partenariats solides
asked
soient
to have solid
établis
partnerships
avec la
that have been
société civile,
established
le
with the civil
secteur
society,
privé
the
et les
private
autorités
sector,
locales.
and the local
Mais
authorities.
au-delà de ça,
But
ce qui nous
above
intéresse
all
aussi,
of
c'est
that,
que
we are
les États ont dit
interested
qu'il faut qu'ils
into the
redoublent
thing
leurs
that the
efforts
states have
pour
said that they would
construire
double
et
their
maintenir
efforts
les
in
sociétés
order
pacifiques,
to build
inclusives,
and
plus
maintain
parce
inclusive
qu'il y a dans
societies.
plusieurs régions du monde où
And in many regions of the world,
conflits sévissent et où il est important de
it is
pouvoir protéger les
important
populations
to be
civiles,
able
mais
to
également,
protect the
ils
civil
ont parlé sûrement sur
population
les femmes,
in different
parce
parts of the
que
world where there are
ces,
conflicts. We
ces,
have also
ces,
spoken about women, of course.
ces engagements sont
These
vraiment importants
engagements
pour
are
nous les
very
jeunes et ce
important for the
sont
young people,
liés
and
aussi
they
avec
are linked also
la
to
déclaration ou
the
l'appel à l'action que
declaration
les jeunes
or the call for action that
handicapés
the young people with
qui sont
disabilities,
membres des comités
members of
de la jeunesse des IDA
committees, of
ont
youth
produit
committees, have
pour
produced
appeler les leaders
in
du
order
monde
to
à
call
travers les
to the
sommets
leaders of the
du
movement
futur à ne pas
in the
laisser les jeunes
summit
handicapés à
on the
côté.
future in
Et
order not to leave behind
ces
the young
actions
people.
sont
And
liées
these actions
à
are
ce
linked
que les jeunes ont formulé dans
to
leur appel
what
à
the young
l'action.
people have formulated
Dans 10 points,
in this call for
notamment le premier
action
appel
in
concerne le
10
développement
points,
durable et sur le développement de la science, de la
the
technologie et de l'innovation.
durable
Le troisième est au niveau
development, the inclusion,
de paix et de sécurité internationale.
the international
Le
peace and
quatrième parle
security.
sur les jeunes et les
Then
générations
we have
futures.
the
Le
young
cinq,
people and
formation
the
de la
future
gouvernance mondiale. Dans
generations
chacun
and
il y
the
a maintenant des actions et des
global governance.
actions dans chacune. Il y
In
a
each of
quelques
these
deux, trois
points,
importants pour nous ici.
we
C'est de faire en sorte que ces
are
documents ils sont
trying
accessibles
to
et
make these
peuvent
documents
être retrouvés sur
accessible,
les sites.
and they can be
Mais
found on
le
the
plus important pour
website.
nous, c'est
But
d'avoir une
most
conversation,
importantly for us
une
is
discussion avec
to
les
have
jeunes qui sont
the
ici
young people
pour que cela
involved
nous permette de pouvoir
in order
orienter le
to be
débat et être
able
sûr
to guide the
que
debates, the
pour l'année
discussions.
2022,
And
on
for
a eu un sommet, un
2022,
jour,
we
c'était 2
had
jours
a one-day
où c'était
summit
le sommet des jeunes
of young people
dans le cadre du sommet mondial pour les handicaps. Mais pour cette
within
année, les
the
jeunes,
GDS,
vous
but this
comprenez avec
year,
moi qu'on n'a pas
the
cette
young people,
chance-là
we do
d'avoir
not
un
have the
jour
chance to
dédié
have
seulement
a
aux jeunes.
special
C'est que
day
c'est une possibilité de pouvoir voir comment
for
est-ce qu'on peut
the young
changer la donne
people.
et se rassurer que dans les
And
sommets
in the, I'm
la
sorry, I
société
don't
civile
hear
et dans les autres discussions qu'il y aura
and
avec les
in
membres
the
du
other
gouvernement, que nos voix soient entendues, que nos
discussions with
priorités
governments,
puissent nous
with
inviter à
the
cette
private
discussion
sector
pour que
and others, our
à des questions
voices must be heard.
qui sont ici. Et vous pouvez répondre dans le chat, tout
You
comme aussi
can
vous pouvez lever la main. Nous avons uniquement 20 minutes pour cette conversation. Et la
reply
première
in the
question,
chat,
c'est qu'on aimerait
or
savoir quels sont
you
les
can
engagements
have it
faudrait-il prendre
ask
pour
the question
répondre aux
live.
priorités les
And the
plus
first question
urgentes des
is
jeunes
what
handicapés.
are the
Vous
engagements
êtes jeune
that are
handicapé
needed
comme moi, ou
in
vous
order to
travaillez avec les
respond to
jeunes handicapés.
priorities, the
C'est
most
que
urgent
vous
priorities
connaissez
for
les
young
vrais
people with
problèmes
disabilities.
des jeunes
Do
handicapés.
you know the
Parmi ces
real
problèmes,
problems
il y
of
en a
young people with
plusieurs,
disabilities?
mais quels sont
What
ceux qui
are
sont très urgents,
the
qui
ones that
demandent des
are
réponses
the most
urgentes
important?
maintenant, que nous voulons que vous
We
puissiez nous
would
aider à
like
identifier.
you
Voilà,
to
ça c'est la
help
première
us
question.
identify them.
I am so sorry, Sylvan. I would like maybe to wrap up before going to the questions, just to make sure that everything is clear.
Comme
Just maybe to mention that what Sylvan has been explaining is that we did a call to action with young persons with disabilities, especially with our IDA Youth Committee before the Summit of the Future. It means when the zero version of the Path for the Future was released, in which we didn't have any references to persons with disabilities in the first draft. And then after the call to action, in which a lot of youth with disabilities participated online in March or April this year, we started to have some meetings in order that youth with disabilities know about the relevance of having the Summit of the Future, and especially this outcome document, which is the Path for the Future. The Pact for the Future is an outcome document which will serve as a way to achieve, to accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. It means that we have now the 2030 agenda, which will be finished in 5 years, but we need to start thinking about what we will have after that. It means beyond 2030. That's why the governments, private sector, other stakeholders had a meeting in September this year in 2020 and 21, which was called the Action Days, and then in 22 and 23rd, the main event of the Summit of the Future, and which we have this outcome document called Pact for the Future. What is important, this document, is because after not having any reference at the beginning for persons with disabilities, now we have 13 explicit references to persons with disabilities, and we have other references to vulnerable groups. But we have 13 references, and also the most important is that there are 2 explicit references to youth with disabilities, especially participation of youth with disabilities, how governments need to enhance participation of persons with disabilities, of youth with disabilities, providing assistive technology and other tools in all decision-making processes. And this is maybe what we need also to know about these questions in order to how you as youth consider that we can align the commitments that governments and other stakeholders need to do regarding disability in the Global Disability Summit 2025 in order to align this commitment with these actions indicated, mentioned in the Pact for the Future. I don't know, just to mention this because I know that Silva was talking about that, but maybe in order to make it clear, especially for those who maybe were not part of these meetings when we talk about something of the future, it will be great to have this like a summary of that. And then please go ahead, Silvan. Sorry for interrupting you. Just to make sure everything is clear, you can go ahead with the questions. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Rosario. C'était
Thank
très
you very much,
important de pouvoir
Rosario.
faire
It
ces
was
compléments-là. Je
very
pense
important to add all
avait
this.
toute raison de
You
pouvoir être
were
fait.
right
Je
to
crois
do
les
it.
questions déjà été mises dans le chat. Je m'excuse, nous pouvons y répondre. S'il y a des réponses aussi, on peut répondre. Et aussitôt qu'on a une réponse à ça, des 3 personnes
You
sur vous
can
avez répondu,
reply
on peut passer à
immediately, of
une
course,
autre,
to all
une autre
these
question. Merci.
questions. Greta here. Just to say, we have a hand raised. If Joseph, your hand is to answer the question which I put in the chat, which to remind everyone is which commitments need to be made to address the most urgent priorities for youth with disabilities. Please go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Hello.
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
How are you? This is Joseph speaking from Canada.
Yes, Joseph, do you have an intervention to make?
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
Okay, the most urgent needs that should be addressed for youth with disability are access to education, the inclusive and accessibility learning environment, and then provision for assistive technologies, and learning materials. And then We also have employment opportunities for youth with disability. We find that in the field of disability, there's few youths which are employed. So those are the urgent needs that should be addressed so that equal employment opportunities and workplace accommodation, and then promoting self-employment entrepreneurship initiative. Another urgent issue that should be addressed for youth with disability is healthcare and rehabilitation services. Affordable and accessible healthcare facility, and then regular medical checkups and assistive devices. And then we also have an issue in mental health support and counseling services that should be addressed for youths with disability, because we find that most youth with disability are going through a lot of mental health challenges, and some of them is even leading to committing suicide. Or so those should be addressed. And then we also have social inclusion and awareness for youths with disabilities. We know addressing stigma and discrimination in communities, like in our country, in Kenya, they believe that the community still believe that youth with disability should not be included. Maybe
Thank you so much, Joseph. I see another hand raised by Pauline.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
it shows it does. Okay,
Hello.
hello everyone, my name is Paulina, she, her. I'm a medicine and public health student from Germany and France, and I'm disabled myself. As to the priorities, in my opinion, I think that, as was mentioned already, accessible education should be a main priority, especially to health-related fields, because in order to tackle the systemic ableism that we see in medical fields, that can only be resolved through accessible education and disabled people being able to study medicine and practice as well. And furthermore, obviously, as we've been talking about, youth engagement and meaningful youth engagement in all advocacy and policy making, meaning that we are not limited to specifically the rights of persons with disabilities or disabled people, but for example, to also be included in the WHO Youth Council and similar initiatives on national and international levels. And to obviously be paid for our engagement and advocacy for ourselves. And lastly, I think, which is on a more personal level, is to tackle ageism-related ableism in health accessibility, meaning that, for example, where I'm from, it's normal to experience lesser access to mobility aids as a younger person, even if you have an equal need as older people might have. So that relation of ageism and ableism needs to be tackled, especially in health-related fields, to increase life quality.
Thank you so much, Pauline. I'm sorry, Fatuma, I'll come to you. We just want to make sure we give the opportunity to participants to also contribute. Thank you so much, Pauline. If you want to come in, feel free to raise your hand. Fatum, go ahead, and then we'll move to the second question.
Ya, saya hanya
Right.
menambahkan
I
dan
just want
merespon
to add
pertanyaan tadi ya,
and to
apa yang paling
respond to
urgent.
these questions,
Saya
what are
kira
the most urgent?
kita
I
semua yang
think
paling tahu apa yang
for
paling
all of
urgent di
us,
negara
it
kita
is
masing-masing
us,
gitu. Jadi
only
bisa
us that
juga
know
kita
what's urgent in our
menyamaratakan
own countries.
antar
So
negara
I
satu
don't
dengan
think we
negara
can
lain. Tentu
make it
ada
the same for
konteks
one country to
tertentu
another
dan
country. There
kebutuhan
are certain
tertentu,
contexts,
situasi
there are
tertentu
certain
yang
needs, there
kemudian
are certain
sangat urgent di daerah
situations
masing-masing.
that are
Misalnya di
mostly urgent
Indonesia,
for each country. For
spesifik di
example, here in
organisasi
Indonesia,
saya, Indonesia Mental
specifically
Health
for my
Association,
organization,
yang
the Mental
kemudian
Health
bergerak di
Association,
isu disabilitas
in working
psikososial,
in the
yang
issues of the
saat ini
psychosocial
urgent
disability,
hanya
the
adalah
one
dua
that is
hal.
the most urgent
Pertama
for us,
adalah
there are two things. First one,
deinstitusionalisasi, bagaimana
deinstitutionalization,
membebaskan dari panti
how to
rehabilitasi,
free these
menghentikan
people
mereka
from this
dari kekerasan,
institutional
gitu ya.
institutions,
Bagaimana
stop
menagih
them from
komitmen
suffering
negara
from
untuk
violence, and
melakukan
to ask
upaya-upaya
state
untuk segera
government
membebaskan orang
commitment
dengan
to
disabilitas
try to
psikososial dari
free
panti
these people
rehabilitasi.
with
Dan yang
psychosocial disability
kedua
from these
adalah
institutions.
bagaimana
Second,
negara hadir
and
untuk
secondly,
segera
how the
memberikan
state should
perlindungan
be
sosial
present
bagi
to
orang
provide
dengan disabilitas
social
psikososial
protections for
agar
these
tidak dianggap
people with
beban, tidak
psychosocial
dianggap
disability,
aib,
so they will not be
diberikan
considered as
dukungan-dukungan sehingga bisa
shame
hidup
for the
inklusif,
people, but they
mandiri
will be
di
supported
masyarakat,
so that they can live
dan kemudian bisa
inclusively and
berpartisipasi
independently
penuh
in the
di
society
dalam
and can
masyarakat.
fully
Saya kira ini
participate
adalah
in the
konteks dari
society.
kebutuhan
I
kita,
think
kita yang
that
paling
is the
tahu, kita
context
yang paling
of the
mengerti
needs that we
bahwa
need for our
apa yang
country,
sangat
because
urgent,
only us they
yang kita
know
anggap saat
what is
ini
the
jika
most
tidak
urgent
dikerjakan
thing
maka
for
akan
our
ada
countries, that
hambatan
if
yang
we
sangat
don't do
besar
them, that
membuat
will
kita tidak
become
bisa
a barrier
terpenuhi
or a
hak-haknya
huge
sebagai
obstacles
orang
later
dengan
on that will
disabilitas
prevent
begitu.
us to
Sehingga
fulfill the
itulah
rights
yang
of
akan
people
kita
with
dorong
disability.
kepada
And that is
pemerintah
the
kita
one that
agar
we
memberikan
will
komitmen-komitmen
encourage our
konkret.
government so that they
Terutama
will
dalam
give a
event ini ya,
firm keep
kita harus
commitment,
memanfaatkan event
especially in this
GDS
event.
ini
So I
agar
think we should
kemudian
take advantage of
orang-orang
this
apa yang
GDS
kita harapkan, apa yang kita
event, so that
perjuangkan,
the things that we
hambatan-hambatan yang
expect
selama ini kita
from
hadapi
them, the
bisa
obstacles that we face
terdorong
up
gitu,
until now,
terfasilitasi
can be
dengan
addressed, can
adanya
be
komitmen-komitmen dengan
facilitated
negara.
through
Saya
the
yakin
commitments
kita
given
yang
by
paling
the
tahu
country. I
situasi yang kita
believe,
butuhkan
again,
untuk kita
only
advokasi
we
bersama
know
sehingga
exact
barrier itu
situations of
bisa
our own country
apa
when it
namanya
comes to the
terminimalisir dan
uh,
GDS bisa membantu hal
minimize
tersebut. Terima kasih.
the impact, and GDS can help us in this area. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Sylvain, sorry, I was helping you with the Q&A. Please go ahead.
Are you here? Sorry, Silva, I cannot hear anything.
Ok.
Okay. Okay.
Merci beaucoup
Okay, thank you very
de
much
m'avoir aidé.
for helping me.
Ok, ok, merci beaucoup. Alors, je pense que
So
ceux qui
I
ont répondu
think
n'ont
that
pas prendre vraiment beaucoup de temps
those
pour
who
essayer de
have
pouvoir
replied
répondre à
took
toutes
a
les
lot of thinking and time to do it.
questions, mais également
But
l'approche que Fatou venait de
the
proposer.
approach that
Certainement, ça
Fatum
peut nous aider.
suggested will,
Néanmoins,
of
ça
course,
risque
help us,
de nous prendre toute la
but
journée à se faire. Et je pense que chacun
still
de
it might we might need for that a lot of time. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing Silva.
participants ici provient d'un pays et peu d'autres organisations pour arriver à cela. Alors, la seconde
So
question,
the second
les
question
intervenants pertinents
is to
qui doivent prendre des
identify
engagements
three
concernant les jeunes
relevant
handicapés et
stakeholders who need
aussi
to make
savoir s'ils
commitments
sont nécessaires
regarding
de
youth
répondre
with
aux
disabilities, and
préoccupations propres
we should also
qui sont aux
see
jeunes.
which are
Alors,
needed to
la
address
question a
the
aussi été
youth-specific
posée
concerns.
dans le chat.
You can also ask your questions in the chat or reply in the chat. You have the questions, sorry, in the chat, and you can reply to it.
I don't see any specific hand raised to answer this question.
I think, sorry, Sylvan, yes, maybe it would be great just to recall because we are talking about commitments. I mean, this example of the institutionalization is a good example on how maybe we need to push for commitments. Youth with disabilities need to push to not only governments, because most of the times we consider that only governments have the obligation to do something, but also other stakeholders. Because I mean, definitely we have now that the isolation guidelines, we have CRPD, general comment number 1. We have a lot of tools, but sometimes youth with abilities don't know much about these tools, and we are here also to support with materials. We are here to support with the advocacy. That's why it's very good also to know what are the stakeholders that you consider that need to do commitments and what are the priorities that you consider are necessary. That's why it's very important for us to have your answers. If you cannot raise your hand, maybe you can write in the chat directly, and you can do that in order to help us to have some responses from you. And as
Claro.
Greta mentioned, we will be using these responses to shape the different sessions also in the GDS 2025. And also we are going to collect some good practices that Organization of Youth with Disabilities have about different topic areas.
Thank you, Rosario. I see Alinafe. I'll allow you to speak. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
If someone wants to put something in the chat, maybe I am not seeing that, or if someone wants to raise their hands.
Hi, can you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
I am
can.
able to hear you.
Okay, yeah. I was about to answer that question about the stakeholders. So I feel like the first stakeholder can be the government, and then the OPDs and the CSOs, and the last stakeholder might be the youth themselves. Because I believe that nothing is for us without us. So we are the stakeholder that we have to make sure that we implement those commitments. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the answer. It's very important also to think about different stakeholders at the same time, how we can make partnerships, because definitely the acceleration of the achievement of the SDGs will be held only if we have partnerships with different stakeholders. We are not going to get things isolated just as a stakeholder group of persons with disabilities of other group. We need to definitely have different allies from civil society and also for other stakeholders. Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you, Rosario.
I don't think we have much time to keep with the other question. Greta and Erika, maybe you can also write your answers here, and we will be happy also to collect your answers. If you maybe have other responses to these questions. Maybe Erika, I will go back to you in order to continue with the next session. And thank you so much to all of you who decided to contribute with this participatory session. And thank you so much, Sylvan, for your support on that.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you both for this participatory session. Everyone sharing their ideas and their perspectives. I know I heard a lot about mental health once again and education, and that are definitely important elements to highlight. And this is why the work that you all are doing, that we all are doing, is so important. And I think now is then a really good time to talk about some of these lessons learned from past Global Disability Summits, to see what worked and maybe what didn't, to really ensure that what we need to see moving forward is successful and we can learn from what we've done in the past. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker of the day, Antonio, who is a human rights advocate and was also a former International Disability Alliance youth fellow, I believe, or you're on the committee. So I feel like you were involved with the Global Disability Summit in the past, and we'll share some of these lessons learned. Antonio, please take it away to guide us. Antonio, let's see. I don't hear you yet. I see you're on camera. Try your Go ahead. Am I the only one? Please, Greta, jump in if I am
No,
the
looks like his
No,
microphone
you're
is
not
turned
the only
off.
one.
Oh.
You're not the only one. I mean, I cannot hear Antonio. I don't know if Antonio, me escuchas? We cannot hear you. I don't know if you open your mic.
The mic is on for Antonio, but we cannot hear
Okay.
him.
Antonio, we cannot hear you. Maybe we can wait like a
Yes, and we will
3,
see,
4.
Antonio. If you get it to work, just jump back in. But I think to be mindful of time, we'll come back to you, Antonio, and see if we can figure out the situation. And if it's all right, we'll continue with our next speaker, which can also discuss the Youth Action Days to the Global Disability Summit 2025 and the challenges and the opportunities with you. So we'll hold off on discussing lessons learned until we can get the mic working, and we'll transition to our other speaker that we had, which is the role of UNICEF in promoting youth with disabilities. Sorry, we're switching the agenda. So Anna with UNICEF, are you with us by chance?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you
Okay.
hear me well?
Yes, thank
Yes,
you for
yes, Anna, we can hear you well.
Yes, thank
Great
you.
to see
Please
you.
take it away, Anna. You're going to chat with us a little bit more of the role that you all do, which I feel like relates to this commitment process, because I know we want to see UN agencies making commitments on
Fantastic.
disabilities and youth. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Erica. And maybe just since Antonio could not speak yet, maybe I can give a little bit of overview of the previous summit, and then Antonio can step in on the lessons that were learned. So in the previous summit in 2022, UNICEF and IDA and Atlas Alliance worked together with over 3,000 young people to put together the Charter for Youth with Disabilities after GDS. And it was a quite intensive event. The event itself was about 24 hours. It was presented in different time zones around the world. And of course, similar to the current GDS, there were several regional consultations with youth with disabilities. Some of them were in person, some of them were virtual. A lot of discussions happened via WhatsApp groups that were created at the regional level. So based on these discussions, based on the key asks, as well as consultations with the GDS summit itself and with the members, the charter was created. I will put in the link right after I speak so you can see the video of this charter. Key things what were discussed and what were highlighted in the charter and what were different through the to the bigger GDS. And many of you already highlighted them in discussions. One was definitely access to education. And in UNICEF, we are committed to ensure that all children and young people have access to education. As of now, we know that 49% of children with disabilities are out of schools. And this is really terrifying fact, right? Knowing that we are trying to keep track of SDGs and there is specific target on the inclusive education, inclusive and quality education. Knowing that the pact in the future is mentioning education as a key aspect, still almost half of children with disabilities don't have access. This is a shame. So from UNICEF side, we have a very strong education strategy that is putting children with disabilities in the center. We're working on the different areas around training teachers on how to do inclusive education, B, ensuring that the physical spaces that UNICEF contributes in building are fully accessible. So schools, learning centers, centers learning in emergencies also have to be fully accessible for children, youth with disabilities, as well as the working around policies. And the most important, in my opinion, and many of you highlighted this here as well, work around addressing stigma. towards children and youth with disabilities, because this is really one of the core main barriers towards inclusion. So yes, that inclusive education was a big ask from the young people. Other ask was looking into so-called intersectionality, right? And some of you already highlighted, and Fatma mentioned that there are many different disability groups, and the way the groups are perceived and have access to resources also very different. So let's make sure that one size doesn't fit all. There are young people with different disability groups in emergencies. There are a different gender as well. So all the things have to be taken into consideration when we're looking at the policy and services that needs to be provided. Another aspect that we highlighted in the previous GDS was access to employment for youth with disabilities, very big one. And again, we recently had just recently had a webinar with ILO and Special Olympics around this. How do you make sure that employment policies are accessible? How do you make sure that that we're working with employees to addressing the stigma and know how to work with youth with disabilities, as well as different mentoring and leadership programs are available. So this is too. Another important aspect was access to sexual reproductive health rights for youth with disabilities, as well as participation. So UNICEF nowadays is strongly involved in the discussions together with IDA and other colleagues around the GDS, and making sure that our commitments are not only broad, but also have targets that are linked to the age, children and youth, as well as looking at the deeper levels of segregation, such as gender and so on and so forth. UNICEF recently it launched to address different barriers at different levels. UNICEF recently launched the toolkit on addressing disability stigma. And this is a big one. It's how can you work on the different levels of society, family level, community level, policy level, organizational level, to address stigma using very specific tools. And it was done together also in consultations with IDA and Light for the World. And a lot of young people with disabilities were part of the development of those tools. So yes, in a bigger picture, UNICEF is quite strongly involved in the current GDS and also requesting better monitoring of the commitments that we make. What we learned as UNICEF, we had over 30 commitments, and now we proposing to have maybe 5 or 6, but that will be tangible and measurable, and we can achieve together with partners. So I think this is a goal in our discussions today, is to look rather on a few, but those that you think will be the most important. And some of them already come out today in discussion, which is fantastic. Rosario, please stop me if I don't have much time.
No, no, no.
It's
I mean,
okay.
I know that Antonio entered for another device, but I think you still have like 3 minutes. It's okay.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for this. Another aspect that was quite important and also mentioned here today, mental health. And looking at the global fora is mental health is becoming more important. So I'm glad that in the discussion, this came out again and again, mental health and intersection with disability, and as well as I really believe that really working around social behavior change and attitudes is one of the key of our work. And what we learned from the previous GDS as well, young people with disabilities have a very big power using social media. So in the previous GDS, we worked together to develop key messages, as we called it, the campaign for GDS youth. So we had over 3 million impressions throughout this campaign. 3 million is a huge number. And it's again, thanks to young people who are committed and distributing these messages through their networks. And this is, I think, one of the key takeaways from the GDS versus GDS youth. GDS youth can really push the messages and have a much stronger advocacy using these simple but innovative solutions that young people have, really the power of change. Yes, I will stop here just to give more time, but we'll be sharing meanwhile in the chat the video of previous GDS charter, just for you to have some reference, as well as the toolkit on addressing disability stigma, because there's a specific component on youth empowerment that might be really useful for all of you, as all of you are mentors and volunteers across. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna, for jumping in and sharing the work that you all have done and plan to do as we approach the next Global Disability Summit. I'm sure there's much to do still, but now I want to see if Antonio, I know we really want to hear from you, so see if the mic works. Let's give it a try.
Ahora sí.
Success.
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we
Go
can hear
ahead.
you.
O sea, ¿ya me escuchan?
Yes, sí, te escuchamos. Yes,
Can you hear me?
Perfecto.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Eh,
perfect.
bueno, pues
Okay.
como ya les han venido contando,
As
en
I was
2022
saying,
se
in
realizó la primera cumbre
2022,
de
we
juventud.
had the
Ya
first
había habido una
Summit for the
cumbre
Future,
global
and
de
that was
discapacidad en
a
2018.
global future,
Sin embargo,
the
en
continuation of the
2022
in
se hace la primera
2018.
cumbre global de juventud
But
que
in
duró 24
2022,
horas, ¿no? Y
that
cada
was the
región
first
del mundo
summit for
tuvo
the
un
youth,
momento
and it lasted
un
only
tiempo
24
para
hours.
poder participar y hablar sobre las temáticas que
We
ellos
had a
decidieron,
chance
¿no?
to talk
¿Cómo se
about the
decidieron
topics
estos
that
temas? Se
other people
decidieron en
decided.
cumbres previas, en
These topics
foros
were decided
previos,
on the
donde
previous
los
forums
jóvenes
and
con discapacidad
summits where
estuvieron
youth with
y nosotros tuvimos
disabilities,
la oportunidad
um,
de
we
comentar
had
las
an
temáticas
opportunity
que
to
nos venían en ese
discuss the
momento
topics
preocupados.
that we were worried about.
La cumbre duró 24
So
horas
this
y cada quien habló de los
summit
temas y
lasted
esto
24 hours,
permitió que
and
se
everyone
dieran
talked about the topics
llamados a la acción muy importantes
that
que hablaban justo
did
sobre los
some
temas que
calls
hemos
for
venido
actions.
abordando, ¿no? Empleo
Some,
inclusivo,
for
educación
example, the
inclusiva,
topics such as
inclusión,
inclusive
accesibilidad
education,
en
access
espacios físicos y
in
digitales,
physical and
entre
digital
muchos otros
spaces,
temas,
also
¿no?
access to
que se tenían por
employment,
ahí.
among other
Yo
topics
creo
that we had
que
there. So
las
I think that
dificultades
the difficulties
que se tuvieron en su
that
momento también ya se han
we had
mencionado en esta reunión. Y es,
that
por
have already been
ejemplo,
mentioned.
poder escuchar a todas las voces de todos los países, de todas
Mm,
las regiones.
we
Sería
were able
muy
to
largo hacer
listen
esto,
to
¿no?
voices
Pero
of
en la
different people
medida de lo
from different
posible se
parts of the
trató
world,
de compactar y hacer
and we
lo
really
más
managed
fluido posible o
to make it
expresar de mejor manera
the
los
fluent
requerimientos de cada
in the best
juventud
possible
en cada
way
región, ¿no? Y creo que ese también fue un
from
gran logro.
each and every region, and
Ahora,
we
cuando
believe that we
tratamos
actually
o unimos
accomplished
este
something.
tema con la Cumbre del Futuro,
Now,
después de la
when we
Cumbre
are
del
trying to
Futuro, el apartado
connect
de
those topics with
juventud
the
nos viene a hablar sobre algo bien importante, que es la
Summit for the
participación de las
Future,
juventudes.
the very important thing is
Y
the
yo iría aún más
participation
allá,
of
¿no?
the
La
youth.
participación de niñas y niños con
Of
discapacidad
course,
también, porque
participation of
a ellas muchas
young
veces no las
children with
incluimos, no
disabilities.
incluimos a las niñas ni a los
Sometimes we
niños,
don't
y eso
really include them,
provoca que
and
este grupo
that
de la población también sea
um,
dejado atrás, ¿no?
somehow
Yo creo que
does that this group has
uno de
been
los más grandes
left
desafíos
behind.
que llevamos
One
para
of
el
the biggest challenges
2025 y
that
para lo que
we
queda de
have
los
for
Objetivos de Desarrollo
2025,
Sostenible
and
es primero
that is related
conseguir
to
una
the
participación plena de nosotras y nosotros,
objectives
las
um,
juventudes y las infancias, en todos los
for
espacios de participación
sustainable
y
development
creación de
goals
políticas públicas, leyes y
is
todo este
creation
tema,
of
porque esto nos va a
public
ayudar a
policies
que
and laws,
afiancemos los
because
derechos que
this
ya
will
se han logrado en algunos
help us
espacios o que
align with
conquistemos
all the
los derechos que aún no se han
rights and
logrado en algunos espacios, ¿no?
that
Por
haven't
ejemplo, la
been
educación
reached in some
inclusiva.
spaces, such as
Puede ser que en
inclusive
algún lado ya
education,
tengan
maybe
este
parts.
derecho
Um,
conquistado, pero si
in
no
some parts of the
seguimos
world,
trabajando
this
e
has been
incidiendo por
achieved, but if
este
we don't
derecho,
really fight, if we don't keep working
pueden pasar
in order to
muchas
achieve this
cosas,
right,
¿no?
a lot of
Podemos
things can
regresar,
happen.
como ha pasado en algunos
Um,
países de América
we can
Latina,
actually
que han logrado
go
legislar la
back.
educación inclusiva, pero seguimos
Um,
metidos en el tema de la
in
educación
some
especial
countries of
o han
Latin American
regresado a la
countries, this has been
segregación,
achieved,
y es
but
algo que no debemos
in
permitir.
practice, it's not
Y para
really done.
esto es bien importante,
So for
otro de
that,
los
it is really
desafíos que se
important.
planteó en su momento
Another
en
of
el
the
2022
challenges that was placed in 2022 is that we should be included in spaces that are not specific for a disability in Latin America and the Caribbean, where the youth of youth with disabilities participate, form part of RIADIS and IDA, specifically in the space of youth and childhood. That is the space that is not specific for disabilities. But it is oriented towards inclusion, to include all the persons with disabilities. So I think that we have a lot of work, a lot of challenges to face. Unfortunately, as we heard some comments yesterday, we should be talking about some other rights, but we keep talking about the right to education. But we have been in this for 16 years. So as young people, we should work together. We should be united, and in order to achieve our goals in the summit 2025. We should be united in order to say what we have to say, but the representatives of our regions, they should tell us how to work together. So I think that this is one of the biggest challenges to to have a teamwork and be able to make that our voices are heard and to achieve that nobody is left behind. This is what I have prepared for today. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Antonio. I'm so glad we got the audio to work because I couldn't agree more, and that we need to be included and have a seat at the table. So thank you for sharing what worked really well and what maybe didn't in the past and what we need to do moving forward. With that said, we are almost at the end of our webinar today, but we do have some time for questions, and then we're fortunate to have Rosario to give some closing remarks. But before that, we have a few minutes to answer any questions that have popped up in the chat. And I think there are a few hands up already, but Greta, if you don't mind, I'll ask you for visual support to see what that might be, if you're still with us, Greta.
I am. Thank you so much, Erica. I actually, there's two questions in the chat box, and I would maybe address them both to Rosario. So Rosario, we have a question from the Commonwealth Children and Youth Disability Network. Devika asked the following. As the official representative of children and young people from over 54 countries, Commonwealth Children and Youth Disability Network would like to understand how we can have a seat at the table at the Civil Society Forum and at the GDS. And I think we've touched upon a few of these points. So maybe Rosario, if you want to answer to Devika, and I'm really sorry if I'm butchering your name, to maybe outline some of these opportunities.
No, I think it's okay. I mean, yes, we have the Civil Society Forum, which will be held in April 1st. And I think, as it was explained also for our other colleague who will be in charge of the panel of youth and children, I think it will be great to write. I mean, there's an email. I mean, she shared her email to write to her in order to have like a panel regarding youth and children. But you can also write what are your priorities. I mean, what do you consider are the priorities that we need to to consider in this panel, because we are here to listen. I mean, the GDS is about disability, especially to push states and other stakeholders to do commitments. That's why we need to know first what are the priorities that you consider that states need to have in mind in order to make these commitments, and also other stakeholders. That's why it's very important that you can start writing an email to us, maybe to Greta and I, and to the person who shared her email kindly, in order to start thinking about how we can shape this panel, how you can also participate, the organization can participate in this panel and support us in the GDS 2025. I don't know, this is my answer. I don't know if Greta, you want to add something else, but I think this is something that we need to start thinking also about best practices that we can have in regarding youth and children with disabilities. And one best practice also is what Antonio mentioned. In Latin America, there's like a civil society mechanism in about youth and children. It is not specific about disability, it's youth and children. It's a mechanism to monitor the 2030 agenda, and they have included two youth with disabilities in this civil society mechanism. That's why we are in compliance with our twin track approach. It means we have specific interventions for youth with disabilities, but at the same time, we want youth with disabilities can be included in everything, in all the mainstream youth movements.
Thank you so much, Rosario. And indeed, I saw we already have a couple of emails in our inbox of the summit secretariat. So thank you so much. And I posted Maria's email in the chat box as well. I'll do it again as we conclude, so everyone has all of the contacts. Rosario, there was another question from Simone. His question was, is there any strategy to involve youths without disabilities in order to enable and facilitate alliances with youth with disabilities?
Okay, now AIDA has like a youth committee, which is comprised by youth with disabilities from our members, our 14 members. And in this committee, for instance, we had the chance to invite mainstream youth movements such as the millennial movement and others. And that's why also Antonio has a lot of experience participating in different forums in Latin America with mainstream youth movements. That's why we also encourage youth without disabilities to be part of our meetings. Most of the time, we invite them to participate, maybe talking about SDGs and other things. That's why I think we want to do like we want to have like a very important platform in order youth with disabilities and without disabilities can prepare together and also can be part together all different initiatives, in society initiatives. Because definitely, if we want to implement the pact for the future, if we want to continue accelerating the achievement of the SDGs, we need to count on everybody, especially on all youth without disabilities, with and without disabilities.
Thanks so much, Rosario. I see one hand raised. So, Alinafe, I'll give you the floor again.
Looks like you're muted still, so
Yes,
yeah.
I can't.
No.
Maybe while we wait, there's a remark from Jose Luis Aguilar, who's saying, I would like to be part of your group to participate. So Rosario, if you are happy, I can share your email in the chat box so that people can reach out to you.
Yes, yes, you can do that, because also we have like a mailing list of the all the youth caucus, which means youth caucus, in which all youth with disabilities can participate, can share experiences, and also share different job opportunities and other things that they want to share. Okay, you're free to put my email in the chat.
Thanks so much, Rosario. And Erika, over to you. I think we just have a few minutes left, so we may need to start wrapping up.
Yes, thank you so much, Greta, for providing that support with the Q&A. And with that, I am really excited to share the floor with Rosario, who we already have been fortunate to hear a little bit about, who will close today's impactful, important webinar out for us. Rosario, you are the intersectionalities and cross movement collaboration senior officer at the International Disability Alliance, and ensure that youth are a part of the conversation within the disability movement. So please finish us out for today and share kind of what we need to think about moving forward leading up to the Global Disability Summit. All you.
Okay, thank you so much, Erica, and thank you so much for this fantastic work that you did today. Just to mention, because I mean, what we try to do today is try to maybe learn from the GDS Youth 2022 to this GDS 2025. It's true that we are not going to have any specific GDS of youth this year, but what we want to do is try to mainstream youth perspectives in all the sessions of GDS 2025. That's why we are continuing with our twin track approach. We did this specific GDS with youth in 2022, and now we want to know how we can include youth with disabilities, and include all of you in this GDS 2025. That's why we are going to collect also good practices. We are going to also have the possibility to engage, to have maybe webinars in which you can engage more and provide your inputs and insights about how we can move forward, and especially talking about these actions 35 and 36 in the Pact for the Future, which includes reference explicitly to the participation of youth with disabilities. Now we have this in the document. Now we have this in written. Please, it's in our hands to translate this written document in a reality. We need to push to our governments in order that they can promote the participation of youth with disabilities. And we have a lot of tools to do that, and we are going to support from IDS Secretariat to do the advocacy in your countries, but we need to do it because governments are not going to do it if we are not going to push them to do it. Definitely, they need to do commitments, and also other stakeholders need to do commitments regarding youth with disabilities. Now, this is the time to change the future. This is the specific time to definitely think about inclusive and accessible world for everyone, especially for youth. Thank you so much to all our service providers, our interpreters in different languages, and the international sign interpreters. Thank you so much to Erika for her fantastic moderation. Thank you to Greta for being there to support us to talk more about GDS 2025, and especially to all of you who was participating today in our webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Rosario. Have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you, Erika, and to all of the panelists. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.